Welcome everybody. This is another one of the ISBL podcast series, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Abi. Abi is one of our fellows. She's an independent SBL consultant. She's also an accredited school resource management advisor, and she's extensive experience in both the maintained and academy sector, and has performed various roles as a very technically competent, highly experienced professional. Abi, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So today we're going to talk about school business leaders and their well-being. And given that we've had, well, approaching a year now, where things have been very, very challenging. We know that school business leaders have been absolutely front and centre in terms of the national effort to keep education moving, and quite often have been at the forefront of measures to reconfigure schools, to undertake risk assessments, to manage the testing regime, to make sure that children continue to be fed, and to make sure that ultimately premises are a safe environment for people to operate in. But I think that duty of care, if you like, and that and the role that school business leaders have played, what we sometimes forget is the support that they need as individuals. So the professional support they need, the advice, the steer, but also the emotional need, the emotional impact of a pandemic. That could be family members, that could be members of staff, it could be seeing children out of school and feeling quite distressed and anxious when they come back into school. It's all of those things. So what I'd like to explore with you today, if we can, is one, your reflections on the impact that the last year has had on professionals, school business leader professionals, and secondly, what's worked well. How have school business leaders supported each other?
Okay, thanks for that. I think the last year has actually brought out the best in a lot of school business leaders. It's brought out the flaws in the system as a whole, which most school business leaders have been talking about, but hasn't been a priority. So when you're talking risk management, the premises, access, all of those issues to do with health, well-being, HR issues, and resourcing, these are issues that school business leaders have always known about, talked about. They haven't been a priority. And suddenly we find ourselves in a pandemic and all the what ifs seem to have, become a fix it now issue. So to that extent, I would say I'm proud of the leaders in the profession, because it wasn't a surprise, but the resourcing and handling of most of it has been a little bit difficult. I think they've handled it well. In the process of sort of jumping through hoops, one minute you hear there's a new initiative out. They've dealt with that, you've put things in place, you think you're even ahead of the curve, and then the goalpost moves and it's something else, something else entirely. First of all, you're in lockdown, you're not in lockdown, they're key workers' children, they come in, they don't come in. I think school staff have done an amazing job of stepping up to the plate and still keeping the kids in focus and the care of everyone. However, I think a lot of people have not found enough time for themselves. One of the things that I found that came up regularly on Twitter was when someone went, "Ooh, I'm having trouble sleeping," and it turns out it was quite a lot of school leaders who were having trouble sleeping, who were thinking about the what ifs, who were not very sure what was happening the next day, but still had to get up and go. And at that time, you start to think, who does the head of the school business leader turn to? I mean, staff, yes, they can contact you, they can tell you they're off sick, they can tell you things are not working. But if the head or the school business leader goes off sick or isn't quite coping, then what? I'm not sure that question's been properly answered till now. And I think that's still a challenge. Twitter's been quite good for school business leaders, and local networks have been good, but I think we can do better.
Yeah, no. So I think you raised some important points in your comments there. So there's I think the school business leadership profession has managed admirably with the very fluid situation and the constantly moving goalposts, the guidance that feels like it's daily, sometimes hourly, and quite often, it's been policy on the hoof, and we're told something on a Friday evening that has to be implemented on a Monday morning, or butted up to a holiday, and has to be implemented the first day back. So, but in the main, I think the profession has risen to the challenge despite some of the missives of government, and I think we're all I take this very seriously, and I've reflected hard on it over the last few weeks. I think the role that the unions play, the role that we play as an institute, the role that the regional groups play, and how we can make sure that we are a lot more joined up in our efforts to support the school business leadership community. I think it's forced us to really ask the question, who ultimately are we trying to serve in our respective roles, and if who we're trying to support is the community of school business leaders that are out there, then we need to work closely together, not against each other, to make sure that support is there.
Yes, I agree. What I've seen outside of the sector, lots of people are trying to find their feet. For those who already have an established means for supporting management, it's worked well. And I think what this has shown is that traditionally over the years, we have not had any mechanisms for supporting senior management. Because if this was part of the culture, then it will be easy to tap into that or to make it available, but it isn't. So I think now's the time for us to actually find ways and means of making this happen. We've traditionally leaned on, we've been leaning on key persons with very little succession planning, very little backup for if they're off sick or they're gone for a substantive amount of time. And I think every school now needs to start to think about that. What does this look like? And I would actually also encourage every family, the SBLs, to think about their family situations. Most of us have parents that we're looking after and children. So, sort of sandwiched in between both layers and worrying about them. And we've got to remember a lot of school business leaders have children who are homeschooling while they are working and trying to make things work somewhere else, and worrying about elderly parents or other children, health of everyone. And it's really a lot to take on.
No, it really is, isn't it? So if you think of a typical day, and there isn't really a typical day, is there? But anyway, let's try and paint the picture of a typical day during COVID-19. So I suspect for many school business leaders, there'll be early risers. They'll be starting their days before most people are up and about. They may even be logging on to their emails before they start their formal day, and the first thing they're going to be confronted with is a barrage of updates and new guidance, and maybe even emails from colleagues pointing to new guidance. So your day starts early and a lot of information to digest, and then you get into the substantive part of your day, which is trying to respond to all of the things that are coming your way, which are very specific to your particular context, environment, whatever it might be. And this is whilst, as you've described, this is whilst the dog's barking, the kids are screaming.
It's a teenage child to get out of bed. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had that one, but it is hard.
All of that, the annoying husband walking in the background, and so forth. So it's a difficult enough environment without all of the other layers that are being placed on top of a busy day. And you work your way through all of the things that you've got in front of you, and I presume throughout the day more demands are placed on you. You get to the end of the day, you probably haven't managed to tackle all the things that you planned to on your list, and still more guidance, more information is coming your way.
Oh, let me just add to that. And then there's that email from school telling you that the child didn't attend a class or two, like you had time to make that happen. Oh, by the way, they're behind on their music homework, and somehow you are supposed to know enough about music or German or French or Spanish to make that happen. It's not happening. I don't know music, I don't know German, I don't know Spanish, whatever they haven't done. We're going to have to find another way to fix it other than me helping them, because that time doesn't exist.
And presumably on top of all of that, then if you're a leader within a school, a school or a trust, then you've got to be there for your team members. And your team members may have work challenges, but they may have emotional challenges as well, which they're offloading. So I guess the picture that I'm painting is it's a demanding job. It starts early. It's likely to finish very late in the day. So the question I'm posing to you, Abi, is how and sorry, I'll add into that people probably aren't taking breaks during the day that they need to. They're not probably taking a full hour for lunch. That would be a ridiculous luxury. And they're not taking recess.
That is such
break.
a strange concept.
Yeah. So with all of that going on, and this has been going on now for the best part of a year. Not to say that it wasn't busy before anyway. How do you well, two questions really. How do you think people are relaxing, if that's even possible, but how are they coming down from the how are they bringing those stress levels down at the end of the day? How are they finding a way to disconnect and to take time for themselves? Well, and the two questions are, one is it happening, and secondly, what is it that people are doing in order to do that really important?
Well, it's happening in some places, but you've got to jealously guard that time. Otherwise, it will get away from you, because you're winding down, and like I said, then you're getting that email telling you your child's not doing the work, and at some point you've got to decide how much of that you can take on. And I know that not many people think they can send the kids into school as critical workers, but I think more and more people need to start thinking about that as an option. Let the kids go into school, even if it's 1 or 2 days a week, where school can help them catch up on the work, because we can't do everything, and there are certain things that we have to just admit. I think you've got to jealously guard, probably even schedule the time to take a walk. Get away from it all and take a walk. Get away from it all and binge watch something, whatever it is that works for you. So that has been happening. And there's one that I came across recently, a very, very lovely coach of mine. Well, she was my coach way back when, and she was one of our speakers at the ISBO conference, Jenny. She actually just set up the space 7 to 8 a.m. every morning. It's a Zoom space where we actually sit down and we talk about what we think we want to achieve in the next hour. We then put our heads down for 45 minutes to actually start to write and plan and think and meditate. And I found that incredibly useful. And at the end of it all, we sort of come together to talk about how much of that we've done. And it's been every weekday, 7 to 8 a.m. And I think it's been brilliant, because there are times when I've actually, my only conclusion at the end of the 1 hour is, this is not realistic. I'm going to have to manage expectations, or this is not realistic. I'm going to have to drop something. And when I put it out there and we have a chat about it as a group, different people have had different challenges. It gets into perspective. Everyone has a plan. It's been sort of incredibly helpful to actually own up to the issues and the limitations and go, actually not happening, or I can do a little bit, or this is the bit I can do, and that's the bit I can delegate. So I think having that space, and because it's a scheduled space, that's why I said you've got to jealously guard the space you want to be in to relax or make things happen, whether it's at the start of the day, at the end of the day. I think it's been incredibly useful for everyone. Some people have come together to, within those spaces, to talk about career planning. We've got some people who are actually writing books, and that's the only time you're ever going to get, because, it's in the calendar. Some people are preparing training materials. I've had a big challenge of looking into year-end issues, and to be honest, there have been very, very big lapses in the control system. And I think the risk of fraud is particularly high with lots of people working from home, and the lack of joined up thinking. There's less, all the evidence going on, and that has been playing at the back of my mind. So it's been actually really good to sit down and think, plan, set up, because within all that rush, the hustle and bustle, there isn't enough planning space. And I think the key to getting it right is planning. But with all of what's going on, that's the one thing we don't seem to have. It would help if management, school, the government, governors, everyone recognizes there is a need for that space within the paid day, and they can either facilitate, create, allow a person to go off and use that space to talk to colleagues and get things rolling. I think that would make a difference. That's within the school day. Then outside of the school day, I think you need to schedule switch off. Things that I've heard people talk about that works includes do not go to bed with your phone. Turn your do not disturb on even during work hours. If you've got to put your head down and you don't have the capacity, emotional capacity to deal with, emails and complaints, then there's that employee helpline that you can give people. But it's okay to put your do not disturb on for 2-3 hours and put your head down and get work done. It's okay for you to take time to actually catch your breath and recover so that the organization can get the best of you, because the best of you, hill hearty and on the ball, is to everyone's benefit. It's not a selfish thing.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think there's a piece around prioritization and taking the time each day to prioritize the tasks ahead of you. And clearly in an environment that we're operating now, you're not going to be able to get through everything. It's just not going to be possible.
Exactly.
We do have a tendency to be kind of reactionary. So, a circumstances dictate the way that we operate. So we wait for things to hit us and then we react to the things that hit us, rather than taking some more control over things and saying, actually, yes, I know I'm going to be slightly knocked off course, but I've plotted the way ahead for the day, and I'm going to be almost relentless in my mission to get certain things done. But that means that other things are going to have to go by the wayside. So you do have to, I think, be as you say, be quite selfish about what you do and what you don't do. I think we need to give ourselves permission as well, not to complete everything.
Exactly.
So it's okay for your list of 1 to 10 not to be completed. If you knock off 3 key items from that list of 10, that's probably okay. And that isn't.
Oh, I think that's exceptional if you knock off 3, because
probably
I can get to work and have 3, right? But once your list has more than 3, you are setting yourself up to fail. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And if you do 1, that's good. If you do 3, that's exceptional.
Yeah, I think that's right. So we do need to give ourselves a bit of a break and give ourselves permission. The other thing, and I do think this is important when you touched on it. So whilst I'm the first to applaud, congratulate the peer-to-peer support which is available through social media channels, and that can be LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever your preferred route is or your preferred forum is. But we need to be away from our devices for periods of time, because if we think we're casually engaging in social media, we're probably not, because as soon as you pick up your device and you see a thread and you respond to it, the likelihood is you're then going to get alerts coming in from various places. Your email correspondence is probably coming through there. You find yourself in a rabbit hole on an issue that you didn't need to look at till the next day. Before you know it, you haven't given yourself the space that you need. So I think one of the takeaways for hopefully for colleagues on this call is that find time to put your iPhone upside down, turn it off ideally, and just stay away from it for give yourself a couple of hours a day at least. And certainly
I think so. One of the things that has come up also is, because you've got to do things differently, you might think, I'll just tweak that. But you scratch the surface and no, you can't just tweak that, because it's got layers underneath that you've got to tweak, change, and before you know it, you're down that rabbit hole as well, and you can't just tweak anything. So I would say, don't assume you can just tweak anything. It's probably you need a lot more flexibility, and yes, get off that. We've had periods where we've tried to actually delete apps or turn off notifications. It's okay to miss out. You're not missing anything. You'll be surprised that you turn it off. You can go for 1 week without lots of these platforms. They'll still be there when you get back. They'll find a way.
Of course. Abi, I'm quite interested to explore the psychology behind, if you like, and I think school business leaders are guilty of this, but guilty in a good way. In that, they're so conscientious, they're so diligent. They want to fix things, whatever it might be. Fix finances, fix premises, fix a school ready for children to come in. But there is something in the psychology of managing huge levels of responsibility, huge levels of workload, and some people are better equipped at putting things into boxes, compartmentalizing, if you will, tasks, and prioritizing the thing that needs to be done today and leaving the thing that doesn't need to be done today until another day. And that way you give yourself more bandwidth. And to use a sporting analogy, many will know that I was heavily into my endurance sports and running and all the rest of it. and I could be sometimes over enthusiastic about training, and I would train hard every day for a sustained period and then break down. But actually, it's not about how much you do. It's about training smart. It's about doing what you can at the right time, building up resilience, and then using that strength to go again. But if you accumulate too much fatigue, if you reach burnout, be it in a sporting context or in a work context, or even in an emotional, just general life context, you're setting yourself up to fail. So actually, it's really important that you give yourself, if you like, headroom every day, so you've got reserves in the bank, so that you build up resilience over time. Because if you go beyond that, so if you exceed your limits or get close to your limits every day, that accumulated deficit almost of energy will bite you very hard. So you almost have a responsibility to yourself, to colleagues, and to your professional life, to make sure that you're able to compartmentalize, and that you're able to build up reserves of energy that you can call on when a crisis hits.
I don't think that's the way we've been taught. I'm thinking of one that, there's get rich or die trying, and then there's a lot of variations of that, do X or die trying.
Yeah.
Is one. Then there is what doesn't kill you will make you stronger, and variations of that. So what we've grown up with is that push yourself to the limit until you're almost dead. And, the die trying people are leaning towards the dying bit, and the what doesn't kill. It's not true that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is not true. Okay. You can break down lots and lots of times, and you probably wouldn't die, but you come really, really close. You'll be amazed how close you can come. But we will need to take those weird cliches and mantras. We need to actually deal with those first and get rid of them and challenge them.
Yeah, well, I think, again, really interesting subject. And if you look at things, by people like Matthew Syed, who talk about incremental gains. Why is it incremental gains? Because gains are made incrementally, not made in one big chunk. So if you, and again, poor analogy, but I'll use it anyway. You go into a gym. If you try and lift the complete stack of weights the first time you go in the gym, you're going to hurt yourself. There's no doubt about it. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That analogy doesn't work there, because you will kill yourself. But if you go in and you add half a kilogram every single day, By the time you get to week 10, you've got the accumulation of all those kilograms. So it's incremental. So your body needs challenging, your mind needs challenging, it needs stretching, because it's in those moments when you stretch it, when you apply stress to it, that it grows and it grows stronger. But that needs to be done in a considered way. And yeah, you cannot. And the one thing I will say, and I've got some lived experience in this, what you can't do is you can't work your way through stress. It doesn't work. So if you've reached high levels of workload, emotional stress, whatever it is, you can't battle your way through those. It doesn't work. And again, back to the sporting analogy, you break your leg, you can't run through a broken leg. You need to let your leg heal and then go back and start running again. And I think we're all, it's interesting, and just bringing it back to the whole pandemic conversation, there's a big debate going on in the background about catch-up, about the catch-up funding and how we recover the losses of lost learning over the last year. And we had a very sensible conversation just before this podcast with sector leaders, and a number of the sector leaders were saying, well, hold on a minute, surely where we are at the moment is just ensuring that children are given access to an education experience, never mind catch up. Abi, just bringing it back, and we've got a few minutes. These podcasts are running for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Got a few minutes that where if we could sort of pull the threads together. So in terms of, we know it's been an incredibly difficult year. It's been difficult because the workload has been immense. It's been difficult because, let's not sugarcoat this, we've all been through a trauma, and people react differently to trauma. And certainly if we've lost loved ones or had loved ones that have been very ill, it's even more exaggerated. But on the well-being side, I'm interested in what colleagues on this podcast can take away. And I think the first thing is that we need, first of all, you need to do a bit of an audit of stress. So to what extent are you stressed? And there are lots of tools out there, some very straightforward tools that will help you to understand where your stress levels are. There are links that we can provide alongside this podcast to various mindfulness apps and stress management services. But if you do an audit of your own levels of stress, then I think it's a helpful starting point. It's important to be honest about where your stress levels are. And then once you know that, then it's the techniques that you need to employ to manage those levels down. So what if you could offer 3 things to colleagues that have done the test, they've done the 1 to 10 questionnaire, and it's come up, or actually you're quite stressed. What would you advise them to do in order to get those stress levels down and get more of a sense of being in a much more content place?
I think it's okay to reduce your working hours. First of all, it's okay to ask for help. Hopefully all of us have access to the employee assistance helpline, or to some charities or free websites, like you said, or I think there is a charity for education actually that can provide that sort of support, where you can ring them and talk through that, and they can actually help you manage this. Now, if you qualify for a higher level of support through the employee assistance helpline for your school, they usually book you into about 6 sessions. Occupation, and of course, as for an occupational health referral, that's still going on. I think occupational health does have resources, and they have seen an increase in calls, so they'll be able to deal with that and provide support. And I would say just protect your downtime. Absolutely protect your downtime. Protect your downtime. Have a plan. I believe one of the things that sometimes we can sit down and fret about is, what if someone in my family has COVID? What if blah, blah, blah? So we sat down and we actually did our own internal risk assessment. What if person A did, or person B, or person C? And we sort of know what the situation looks like depending on who it is who falls ill. What if A plus B? What if it's the kids? What if it's one parent, both parents? We sort of have a fair idea of, what could happen. Put a call through to our family members to discuss what we would need in terms of support. We have, it's not something that we're worrying about now to say, what if? We know that what if this happens, this is what we're going to do about it. And that's taking that pressure away. We'd rather it didn't happen, but it's fewer surprises would be good.
Really, 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 really helpful. Abi, I've just got three things, just wrapping everything up that I'm going to offer, and then I'll come back to you for final reflections. But I think for me, it's about giving yourself permission to have time for yourself.
Mhm.
I think we've got to stop making unreasonable expectations of ourselves. And I think the third thing I say is give yourself that headroom. So, almost try to deliberately do a little bit less than you think you need to do each day, so that you build those reserves up, and then you bank them, and then you've got that element of resilience to tackle whatever's coming down the tracks at you, and keep, it just like the oil levels in your car. Just keep those reserve levels nicely topped up, and you do that by giving yourself a bit of a break. And then just to finally, my final bits is there are lots of networks out there, lots of people who are prepared to help. Keep talking to colleagues, keep talking on the networks, lean into your associations and to the institute, and as you said, Abi, there's plenty of professional agencies out there that are ready to help and listen to you if you find yourself in a difficult place. And none of us are immune, and just because we demonstrate vulnerability now and again, that's fine. That's human. That's normal.
Exactly.
Final reflections, Abi, before we wrap up.
Yeah. Let us kill that. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger thing. It could paralyze you and put you in a vegetative state, but it won't kill you. So no, it is not true. They're just some of these things we've grown up with that I think we need to challenge, because they're not serving us right now.
Brilliant. Abi, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. Really, really interesting, really insightful. Thank you, colleagues. Hope you found it interesting. Hopefully speak soon. Take care.